Hey, Pops, what's this old film you've got in the box up here in the attic? What's it all about?
Oh, that's an old video movie that I used to watch when I was a kid on the TV. Why don't we stick it on the projector and I'll show you what it's like? I think you'll get a kick out of it.
Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to another health class. Today we will watch on television a program by Dr. Von Schlopp. He'll tell us about physical development in teenagers.
Well, boys and girls, when people think about adolescence, puberty is usually what first comes to their mind. However, as dramatic as that is, it's only one component of many changes that happen in the body of the person and in their other forms of development. When we think of physical change, we usually give the greatest attention to the reproductive system. Reproductive changes are important, but there are other momentous changes that occur in the other systems as well. Everything starts off with the endocrine glands. They contain hormones that govern pubertal growth and physical changes in several ways. The hormones you should be concerned with are the pituitary gland hormones. These include growth hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, and other activating hormones, which increase the rate of physical maturation and signals other glands to secrete. Also the thyroid gland, which produces thyroxine. These stimulate normal brain development and overall rate of growth. Third, the adrenal gland, adrenal androgens in particular. Some changes at puberty occur, particularly the development of secondary sex characteristics in girls because of the adrenal gland. Now, further secondary developments of the reproductive system involve ovaries for the girls that produce estrogen, or a form of it called estradiol. These are for the development of the menstrual cycle, breasts in girls, and has less to do with the secondary sex characteristics than testosterone does for the boys. Testosterone made by the testes is crucial in the formation of the male genitals prenatally and also triggers the sequence of changes in the primary and secondary sex characteristics in the male. When I refer to primary sex characteristics, I'm including growth of the testes and penis in the male and the ovaries and uterus and vagina in the female. Secondary sex characteristic changes include breast development in the girls, the changing of voice pitch and beard growth in the boys, and the growth of body hair in both sexes. Well, you seem to be interested in sexual development of the girls, so let's start with that. Sequential changes are interlocked in a particular pattern in the girls. The first steps are the early changes in the breasts and pubic hair, closely followed by a peak in the growth spurt. Then, after that, there is additional development of breasts and pubic hair. Now, the first menstruation, or event called menarche, occurs about 2 years after the beginning of the other visible changes. In 1840, the average age of menarche in the Western industrialized countries was around 17 years old, and then it started to drop 3 to 4 months per decade until the 1950s. This is referred to as the secular trend, a decline that's leveled off in most industrialized countries, but still happening elsewhere where diets and health are improving. The change is most likely caused by diet then, increases in protein and fat intake, but also along with reductions in physical exercise. It seems to be related to the increased proportion of body fats in females. It's possible to become pregnant shortly after menarche, but the periods are rather irregular, and full adult fertility doesn't develop for a period of years. In the early menstrual cycles, often no ova are produced. Now, in the case of you boys, let's look at your development. It's also following a similar sequence of physical development, beginning with the genital development, if you don't mind me mentioning this in front of the girls, pubic hair development, before reaching the peak of growth spurt. Then the beard and the lowering of the voice occurs near the end of the sequence. Now, although the order of the physical development in adolescence seems to be highly consistent, individual teenagers, like some of you in this class here, deviate from the norm. Some of you are real deviants. Now, let's look at the timing of puberty. The accumulated research suggests that each teenager has an internal model of their own that is normal for them. Now, it has been determined that girls who are early developers or experience major body changes before the age of 10 or 11 showed no problem with self-esteem or academics. They had fewer behavioral problems. Although early maturing girls belong to groups of older peers who display antisocial behaviors. Thus, associating with older youths who get into trouble may set these early maturing girls up for sexual and social and school problems later. Among boys, the earlier their development, the more positive their body image, and the better they do in school. Thus, they have less trouble they get into, and they have more friends. Changes in other body systems also allow adolescents to acquire their new cognitive and motor skills. For example, the brain. A 6-year-old's brain is 95% of the adult size, but significant anatomical changes must continue to occur. During that growth spurt, there is synaptogenesis, the creation of synaptic connections between the neurons. Some of these then have to undergo synaptic pruning to reduce them. In other words, it's a use it or lose it principle. Increasing environmental influence on gray matter affects the size and complexity of the neurons. It doesn't actually change the number of neurons. In early adulthood, we peak with volumes that are reached in different brain regions at different times, both in the boys and the girls. Among the last areas to develop into the adult level is the frontal cortex, the area involved with the control of impulses, judgment, and decision making. This raises the concern about adolescents' ability to control their responsibility for their actions. In addition, white matter steadily increases in the 4 major lobes of the brain. These are associated with cognitive, behavioral, and emotional differences between children and adults. For example, the corpus callosum integrates the activities of the right and left sides of the brain. Pathways connecting to speech recognition affects speech production and language skill development. You're wondering about the skeleton. Yes, this undergoes great changes too. The adolescent may grow 5 to 13 centimeters a year for several years. Now, after that growth spurt, they add height and weight slowly. Girls attain most of their height by age 16. Boys continue to grow until they're about 18 to even 20 years old. Now, shape and proportion of the body skeleton also changes. You know about cephalocaudal and proximal distal development. Well, just reverse that in the teenager. Their hands and feet grow first, then their arms and legs, and then their trunk. Then the head, with the frontal area of the skull developing more. Because of the large feet, we often say that adolescents are awkward and uncoordinated. Yet they're actually better coordinated than they were when they were school-aged children. Other changes to the skull, the shape of the jaw is altered for the permanent teeth development. Teenagers' faces are typically bony in appearance because of this bone growth. Joint development also occurs and achieves the level of coordination close to those of the adults. Boys continue to lag behind the girls, though. Early adolescent girls tend to outperform boys of the same age on a variety of athletic skills. But then that leads us to muscles. Muscle fibers become thicker and denser, making their muscles a lot stronger in the boys in particular. The sex difference in muscle mass is probably hormonal, but also influenced significantly by exercise patterns. Another major component of the body is fat. At birth, girls have a slightly more fat tissue amount than boys, but this discrepancy gradually increases during childhood and adolescence. By age 13 to 17, the change has gone from 21 to 24% for girls. In the boys, it's decreased from 16 to 14%. Now, physical activity in youth has resulted currently in a doubling of the number of overweight young teens that we have, 6% now, compared to a tripling of the rate of obesity, about 17%. Heart and lungs also increase in their size, and the heart rate drops. For sustained physical effort, the boys have more ability than the girls at this period because of a larger heart and larger lung capacity. So now we see that puberty changes are different between boys and girls in timing, but not necessarily that different in what it develops and what order. Now, in our next episode, we will be looking at the impact of these changes that happen to children in the adolescent age.